Welcome everyone to the Consistently OK podcast. My name's Luke and I am here as always with my dear friend Nick.
Howdy.
And we're presenting you with a bi-weekly pod centered around pop culture that we do our very best to make consistently okay for you. Each month we give you one episode where we dive into something such as a film, TV show, game or a comic, and we break down our thoughts and more on it. Our second monthly episode will be our in-depth series, and this season we're focusing on Batman. From films to animation, where we'll take you on a journey through the highs and lows, ins and outs, with representation of Batman throughout the years. This week's episode is sponsored by friends over at Get Your Comic Con. Here they are to tell you a little bit about themselves.
Hey super friends, my name is Neil.
My name is Martin.
And we are the hosts of the Get Your Comic Con podcast. We are here fortnightly-ish to bring you a slice of film, TV, comic book and pop culture goodness from our studio to your speakers. You can pick up our podcast on all major platforms or head to our website www.getyourcomiccon.co.uk for more.
Alright Nick, Loki Doki, here we are.
Nice.
Finally. I know, good. Strong start at the episode we've both been looking forward to. Now we've finally seen all of Loki, but this is a double header episode. Not only are we going to give you the gift of us talking about Loki, we're also going to be talking about Masters of the Universe Revelation, which has recently come out on Netflix a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And obviously Loki's ended a few weeks ago as well. So hopefully everyone here has seen both shows now, because we are going to be talking about spoilers.
Yes, we've given everyone sufficient time, so if they haven't watched them and we spoil it, it's your fault. It's not on us.
Yep. It's all on you.
Yeah, we're not feeling guilty.
No, not at all. We'll start with the show that we both watched first, obviously. The one that's, well, I guess it's been a few weeks now for sure since this is ending. I would like to think everyone enjoyed it as much as us. So let's start there.
Yes.
Loki. So for those who haven't seen it, and even those who have seen it, a little bit of background for you anyway. So Loki is one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe TV shows that airs on Disney+. It's a weekly format show. It contains 6 episodes, roughly between 40 to 50 minutes, I think they were.
Yeah.
And Tom Hiddleston reprises his role as Loki, which is fantastic because he is by far one of the best things in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
100%.
It has a heap of other new characters in it, as well as, wow, Owen Wilson joining the cast, which is another fantastic addition.
Although he didn't say wow.
He didn't know. He didn't say wow. But I like to think there's a end credits scene somewhere for season 2 where he's going to say it. It's going to be.
I hope it's when he sees the jet ski. I hope in season 2 he sees
Wow.
the jet ski and you're just like, wow. It'll be great.
Wow. Probably said it too many times now.
Or the jet ski is called wow.
That would be a twist.
Yeah.
The World of Warcraft jet ski. So it's quite. I mean, it's a fantastic series. I mean, straight out the gates, I think it's my favorite one of the shows so far. I liked it a lot more than, although I really enjoyed WandaVision, and I didn't mind Falcon and Winter Soldier, although that we've spoken about that in a previous podcast. It's had a few issues. Don't swear, Nick. We don't swear. We do swear. But this is elevated the TV shows, and rightly so, because it has such a huge, for a TV show, it's the ramifications for this. I mean, WandaVision obviously has ramifications after it as well, but this is the big one. This is the one where they've clearly sat down and planned out where it goes next. I heard Kevin Feige saying that, they sat down and all the rules about the multiverse and everything that come throughout this, and I think they nailed it for what could have been a really, I guess, confusing storyline. It worked really well.
Yeah.
You obviously you enjoyed it as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely loved it, which is rare for anybody else who's listened to this podcast. They know that I'm pretty critical of the MCU.
Sure are.
Yeah. And I think the reason, I think it hit early on as well, that I was like, this could be going in the direction that I've always wanted it to go to, in that I always feel like the MCU struggles with consequences. I feel like I love DC, and that's because there always seems to be a lot of consequences in the world in terms of what these heroes are doing. And I feel like with the MCU, because every film is just this massive superhero blockbuster, by the time you get to the next film, it's almost like that other thing just didn't happen. And it always just feels less interesting because of it. it sort of just feels like each one sort of copies the same. And then in Loki, the bit that really hit me was in the first episode when he's watching the like reel of who he is if he continued on the path past him taking on the Avengers, and he sees, you know, like him basically being the reason that his mum dies, and sees Thanos and sees this trajectory that he goes down. And I know that got a load of criticism. Like, I remember when the episode came out, loads of people criticized it for effectively Marvel rehashing what happened. But I think to the people that were kind of seeing that as an issue, I don't think they've quite got what that moment is, because that moment is it's not for the audience. Like, no. It's about the story. It's about this version of Loki who hasn't seen those events, seeing what his life becomes, and giving him that kind of consequence of, you know, this is what you do to the people around you, and this is what happens to you ultimately. Like, there is a change in you, but you go through a hell of a lot of bad shit to get there. And I think them, like the writers and directors and everything, taking the time to do that, I just think is stunning. It's shot in such a beautiful way, and Hiddleston's acting is amazing, and it really hit home. And I was like, oh my god, this if this season continues in this trajectory of kind of saying, you know, this is how heavy it's going to be, then I kind of thought, yeah, that this could be one of the MCU's best kind of entries, and it did continue that way. I loved it. It was just amazing.
I just don't think it missed a beat in terms of every episode. There wasn't really an episode that felt out of place, or it felt like every episode needed to happen for the right reasons, and every episode almost changed the game a little bit, because obviously at the end of the first episode, you know there's a Loki out there, but not the Loki that we're looking at.
Yeah.
Second episode, there's obviously them hunting. Then the third episode, they find each other, and that's a completely different spin on the episode then, where they're both together, Loki and Sylvie. And then obviously it's all about them against the timekeepers that are at the TVA and Rainslayer, and it just went so well, and it felt so fresh every episode. It wasn't a drag.
Yeah, definitely.
And like you said, Tom Hiddleston as Loki is just fantastic, and I loved the real thing. I don't really understand the criticism. I mean, I can see why there's criticism, but everyone gives criticism for something every episode, no matter how good it is. Similar to what we'll talk about with Masters of the Universe later. Like, there's always some reason for criticism, but it's not always warranted. But I thought the way they've written it, that using this character was so pivotal to what is going to happen next, because there's no one else that could have done this role, I don't think, than Loki, with his story that he's already had, and everyone already cared for him coming out of Thor Ragnarok as well. Everyone loves Loki, don't they? In this, not everyone loved the character in Avengers, even though he was the bad guy, but he played the role so well.
Yep.
I actually watched Endgame the other night again, and it's so odd to see that bit when he goes off the Tesseract, because you know everything they're doing in Endgame, just at the same time Loki's literally just
going through this
somewhere else now, going through it. And obviously I'll jump a little bit to the end, but I feel like this Loki hasn't, the way he ends up after obviously before Thanos kills him, that sort of arc he's on, he's going to really pick that up again, because he's going to be back to being on track with Thor if those two cross paths again. And it looks like he's in the Doctor Strange 2 as well now, so he'll most likely be a hero in that series.
Yeah,
I think they've been able to make a whole huge story from where we saw him last off before Thanos killed him to now, and I think it works. It's so clever. It's just so the writing is so good that they've just thought like, oh, he's showing up again. Loki was always around. He tricked Thanos. He was a projection. Blah blah blah. It's just, we've brought him back. Here he is, and we can just slot him back in, and all this stuff has happened from his journey, the TVA and things.
Yeah, I also really liked that there wasn't a lot of because I wasn't a massive fan of Ragnarok, and
what?
It's not as bad as Civil War, but it's not great.
Wow.
But I liked in this that he wasn't necessarily doing a whole lot of tricking. He wasn't
No.
kind of, doing a lot of manipulation. I think in the first 2 episodes, he's sort of figuring
trying,
out,
isn't he?
Yeah,
but
then he sort of realizes that there's this bigger thing, and that's then the journey that he goes on. And I think when you get to that kind of end scene between him and Sylvie, and he sort of says, "Hang on, we need to talk about this, because this is a big thing, and the 2 people that are at the center of this thing are 2 people that he describes as one can't be trusted and the other can't trust." And so when you've got these 2 people at the center of making this big decision about the universe, I think that just makes it really, really hard hitting for Loki to turn around and be the one that's kind of like, but we need to think about this. And even when Sylvie decides to kill He Who Remains, the look on her face afterwards is just like, I don't know. Yeah. And I love that like that is a consequence. Both of those have consequences. And I absolutely love that. I just thought the whole show through and through was just this bold kind of risk-taking storytelling that I hadn't seen in Marvel, unless it was in Infinity War or Endgame, where it's kind of like you have to have those elements in there because they're enormous tentpole films. But for an MCU series, I wouldn't have thought that they could go down this kind of road. It's just so interesting, and just so well done. I also absolutely love the score. I've been listening to it the last few days.
I really like listen to the score as well. It's really, really good. And it sticks in your head as well.
Yeah, it's like Stranger Things good.
Yeah, it is. I'd love for little elements of that to sneak into like Doctor Strange 2. It feels like it's connected more so than just Loki showing up. But I think that's fantastic as well with this show, and WandaVision as well. We've got Scarlet Witch and Loki and Doctor Strange 2. It's just such a, and God knows what happened in Spider-Man 3, but it's really set up in a really good and interesting direction. Like if you were on the fence of the MCU, like I know you have been so far, and I know you enjoyed WandaVision or elements of it as well, but you have to be looking forward to definitely Spider-Man 3 and Doctor Strange 2, because especially with the villain that's involved now as well, and how good that acting was in that last episode as well for He Who Remains, aka Kang.
Yeah. I mean, obviously
he's in Ant-Man 3 as well, so it's
that was the thing I was going to say is
cool stuff going on.
Sort of with Kang, we knew he was going to be in Ant-Man, and then I think going into Loki, there wasn't any kind of question of like, oh, Kang's going to be in this. And then I think it was like first or second episode, there started to be little, that could be Kang. I think there's one of the timekeepers looks a bit like Kang.
Yes, there is.
I think we even spoke about it just before we recorded another podcast like a month ago or something. We said could be Kang. And again, it could have been that Mephisto situation with WandaVision. But
I did. You're right. It could have. I thought it was going to be like misdirection, but I think as soon as Goliath and the green and the purple colors behind Goliath were there, I was like, that's Kang.
Yeah.
But not that. I didn't think it would be that version of Kang, though. I didn't think it'd be more variant.
That's the thing that I love as well, is that they got to the kind of end part, and it wasn't necessarily Kang the Conqueror. It was like a version of him who's like, there's other versions of me out there that are evil
10 times worse,
and you just kind of think, fuck. And I love that they can now have a villain in the MCU that could be portrayed in different ways. Like you could have him be the villain in, like, you could have him be an element of a villain in Doctor Strange, but you could also have him be a villain in Ant-Man, and he'd be 2 different versions of that villain. I think that makes it really interesting, and I just think there's so much scope for it. I just hope it doesn't close off. Like I hope at the end of Doctor Strange,
I don't think it will. I have a slight theory. Is it too early to talk about end of Loki theories?
No, go for it. I think you can go.
So,
for it.
Although I haven't quite nailed it on yet, but I would think that Loki obviously comes back to CVA and no one knows who he is. I think he has come back to the main timeline, because obviously when he's in the TVA, he's not on a timeline, is he? He's just he's there, but he's what they're looking at when they're looking at the main line. That's the main timeline, and Kang in this TVA, which is part of the main timeline in essence. He's obviously out in the open now, isn't he? And I don't think he's like the evil Kang. I think he's just a bad Kang.
Bad Kang.
A bad Kang. But I think this isn't sounding as good as it did in my head. But I think there'll be another villain in Doctor Strange 2, which will come from something like Nightmare. Maybe will be the villain in that, which is all the madness that's going on. Like someone like Nightmare is just feeding off of all of this stuff that's going on. But in Ant-Man Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, I think that is where they'll find out that there's a really sinister version going around the timelines. And they're the ones who are going to have to go and track him down.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think this villain will be the next Thanos. I think he'll be the big bad for this phase.
Yeah.
I still lean towards that a Doctor Doom or Galacticus type thing will be the one that's, when they all come together the next time in. I think there'll be another Avengers film, but the next Avengers film will probably be against Kang. But this, the next big one that's a huge Secret Wars type thing might be a Doctor Doom type thing. But I think we're going to see several Kang characters, but there'll be one huge bad one that is you see for the first time in Ant-Man.
Yeah.
I think Loki is going to just have to. I think he'll be like the Nick Fury now of the sort of Marvel films. I think he'll just pop up every now and again.
Cool.
I think.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, I did really wonder about like what their time span is on Kang, because I got the feeling like so much of that starts to build the groundwork for Secret Wars, and I feel like that is something that they're gunning for.
I think Secret Wars is their next Endgame. That's what I think. Yeah. But I think there's a few big films to come out, like another Avengers, like I said, and things. But I think Secret Wars is where it all comes to a head. Well, I think X-Men involved in everything. That's what I mean by the next big thing.
Yeah.
Do you think they're going to do?
Do you think they're going to tie Fantastic Four into Kang? Because there's a variant of him that's related, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. I think because he's related to Richards.
Yeah.
So I think all of this will culminate in Kang being a big bad. I think we'll get. It's hard, isn't it? Because I wouldn't throw Galacticus in the Fantastic Four film. I also wouldn't put Doctor Doom in the Fantastic Four film straight away. Mm-hmm. I think they need to be planting seeds for that first. So that's why I think Kang, because Fantastic Four that's the end of this phase, if I remember right. I think the last, that or Blade maybe. Blade could easily come out after Fantastic Four and not really be like sort of a, like Spider-Man ended phase 3 and Ant-Man ended phase 1 and things. I think if they're culminating Fantastic Four, that would be probably the best way to sort of end this sort of a phase and then head into something different, like tease Doctor Doom at the end or something. But I think Kang will be involved in a lot of it. Fantastic Four, Ant-Man, obviously, Doctor Strange. And I'm happy with that because I think it's a good villain. I think what's his name, Jonathan
Majors.
The actor Majors. He played the role really well, but obviously,
so well.
The thing for him is he's got several versions to play now, hasn't he? So
I think as an actor, that must be awesome to just be like, I'm playing a villain that is done in 1,000,001 different ways.
I don't know if I answered your question, though, by the way. I feel like I've rambled through my theories, and
I think you did. But I really, the thing that I love about Loki, and I hope that isn't, it doesn't get lost in a second season or anything, is I love that they take the time to just have moments where they sit down and have conversations. Like I feel like that's something I absolutely love about DC, is that throughout Zack's trilogy, there are so many bits where it's just two people sat down, they're having a conversation, and there's like a real kind of like gravitas to it. It's just really heavy, whether it's Batman and Alfred, or like even the small scene between like Alfred and Wonder Woman about tea and stuff like that. There's just a nice.
The canteen scene's good in Loki, isn't it? Canteen with Loki and Morbius.
That's really what I was going to say. Yeah, like their relationship, it takes time to do that. And I love the conversation between Loki and Sylvie on the train, like where it's just the two of them just sat talking. And then even the finale, like the finale is bold in that it doesn't come down to like a massive fight. It's just these three
That's
people.
exactly what I was thinking. That's such a good, because when you first see He Remains come down the lift and he's eating an apple, you think, okay, where is this going? But easily you think within 5 minutes of that they're going to be fighting or something. But it's just talking, and it's so good because it's sort of, it doesn't rush anything. It would be so easy to rush that into something like a fight and action, but then not actually kind of understand what He Remains is about and why he's just sitting there at the end of time. But they take the time at least for 10-15 minutes with the way he does the cool thing on his desk with the actions and stuff.
That's
it's like,
so cool. Yeah.
Okay, I can follow this. I get it. Like I understand I don't understand it at all, but I can follow this, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
And like you said, with Loki questioning if it was the right or wrong call, like the stakes are really high. If you were in that situation, do you let the person that you're in love with find some sort of peace, or do you think, right, there's a bigger picture? And Loki, being who he's been in the past, it's a huge moment for his character. And really, it really does. If he was coming off like a good guy throughout the series, that really cements him as in, like, and that's why people won't like it as well, because Loki isn't a good guy, is he?
No, exactly. It's just,
but you see when all the branches are teeing off and everything is like, you think, this is, not only is that happening, and you just immediately your head goes to like, right, we're going to get Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man, and Andrew Garfield. That's Andrew Garfield's branch right there.
Yes.
Which is amazing in its own right. But also you have, Loki, when he comes back to the TVA, and he's just it's such a good visual. He's just gutted. He's so gutted.
Yeah.
And he's back to where he started in the TVA, and you already see him thinking like, right, like we have to fix this, and just to see that it's completely different is a really good thing. I just think the whole last episode was fantastic.
Insanely well done.
They pulled it back, didn't they? Like that's what I'm trying to say. That the moment they walked into the castle or the building, there was nothing else going on really. There was obviously you had little bits of the TVA, but that was quite calm as well.
Yeah. That was I think that's the thing with Loki all through is, again, because Loki's not really a fighter. He's not like I'm going to go fist to fist kind of, he's mischievous and he sort of plays around. And I think had they had like a massive action finale, it just wouldn't have felt as right. But having it as just the conversation and it be really fucking ominous as well. Like again, Jonathan Major's acting is just insane, but his dialogue is just it's just so captivating.
Yeah.
Like you can't help but just sort of be fixated, and it really sucks you in. And I thought that was really bold. Again,
I love the fact that he says that he'll see them soon as well when he's about to die. It's it's almost because he obviously really cares, but he's also like, I'll be right back here anytime soon. Like, but all this shit is going to happen in between that and then. It's really cool. What was I going to say?
So well done. So well done.
What was it? Oh, we were talking about the action. Obviously, you got the action in the penultimate episode, didn't you? With Elias and Richard E. Grant. Richard E. Grant that is the GIF.
It was amazing.
GIF of the year so far is Richard E. Grant saying "Glorious Purpose." It's it was so cool to see classic Loki. And every end of the episode had a nice little. I can't wait for next week's episode because of what just happened. Like Alligator Loki and Kid Loki, and Worthy Loki. Just President Loki. It was also. It was just so good. I think that's the only episode where the only thing I was a bit frustrated by was Owen Wilson's character Morbius having the car and so easily finding Sylvie. Like that's just the slightest criticism I have, because I thought it was a bit too easí because
I mean it's circumstantial, isn't it? It's just sort of
circumstantial, But that was the only thing that stood out to me. And pretty much, I don't think there was anything else at all that I ever think. Oh no. My wife, who I always bring up in the podcast, she loved it as well. I don't think I've seen anyone that has enjoyed it. People that aren't even that big, and obviously I work in a comic shop, and we can't get enough Loki comics in, which is always good to see, isn't it? It happened with WandaVision as well. People buying Tom King's Vision and Scarlet Witch comics selling. Is that the best thing is with these TV shows? I find is people coming to try and find some of the source material and want to read more.
Definitely,
fantastic.
That's sort of like a lot of this show reminded me a little bit of Invincible, where it was just sort of every episode you just couldn't wait to watch the next one and see kind of how far they're taking it.
Yeah, agree.
And I think again, it's with the source material. I think Invincible makes you want to go away and read the compendiums and just sink into it. And I think Loki's the same, where it's just sort of you really want to absorb that character. And Kang, I feel like he's a character that you know, I think the name is familiar to a lot of people, but I don't reckon a lot of people know him. Like I remember ages ago seeing I can't remember what book it's from, but there's one where Thanos takes on Kang, and then Kang basically just obliterates Thanos. There's like a piece of dialogue there that it says something like, I want your skull as a trophy or something like that. And then Kang just like obliterates Thanos and he's just holding his skull. It's like, that's so cool. Not that we're going to get that in the MCU, but
I mean, Kang doesn't have a lot of powers really either. He's just I don't recall him having any powers. He's just very intelligent and a scientist, isn't he? Which is
I mean, he just goes through time, doesn't he? And he like manipulates things through time. Really, that's sort of his thing. But he's just awesome.
What did you think about the Sylvie character?
I thought she was wicked. Yeah, I thought she was really cool. I was kind of glad it wasn't Lady Loki and it was more kind of Enchantress. Is that her name? Yes.
Enchantress, yeah. I would think that, I mean, did we speak about this before? I can't remember if it was you and I or someone else that they're building towards it. It felt like they were building towards a young Avengers because Enchantress is in there and obviously everything else is looks like they're pulling little characters from different areas. And I would wonder if she would be in Doctor Strange 2 as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. But I don't know whether you distract from the plot because I feel like you have to have the meeting of Loki and Sylvie. And I don't know whether that takes it away from Doctor Strange. I don't know if that's something you save for season 2.
I guess it depends on how long the film is, because I feel like that between that and Spider-Man 3, there's going to be so many moving parts. Like, how do you cram it all into? When you watch these episodes, especially ones that you really enjoy, like Loki, you think 48 minutes isn't enough.
Yeah.
Like to finish this story. Obviously, it did work out for this, but sometimes things are so short. You just, how do they cram it all into a 2-hour film?
Well, I thought it was crazy that Loki gets so much done in 47 minutes, whereas a 52-minute episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier just goes nowhere.
That comes back to the script, though, doesn't it? It's like saying with the talking, those moments where you can get a lot done in 5 or 10 minutes of TV time when you're just talking and establishing the story, compared to more action where yes, the story progresses, but you don't really find out anything. So, for instance, with Falcon and Winter Soldier, one of the best bits was that opening fight scene. Not opening, it was an opening of an episode with US Agent, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and that was 10-15 minutes and stuff. But yes, it was coolness to something, and I guess that's what that show needs. But you didn't get many of those.
Yeah,
it wasn't a lot of script. You got Falcon and Winter Soldier talking sometimes and everything, in the therapy and everything, but it wasn't the same as what you get out of these characters talking. And that last episode, like I said, you put action in the season finale, and you put anything. If you open that episode and you still have to wrap up the penultimate episode when they're at the drop zone with Goliath, then you lose half the story, don't you?
Yeah. And I just really appreciated that. I really, and I think that's clear from the first episode as well. The first episode really sets it up as we're not necessarily telling something that's going to be action-packed. I think, they were more telling something personal to Loki about sort of finding his place in the universe and really kind of hammering down on his character. Because again, in that first episode, you've got the scene where he just sees the Infinity Stones in a drawer, and to this version of Loki, that was the goal, is like the Infinity Stones, the Tesseract. And for him to sort of be like, there's a pocket in the universe where they just mean bugger all. Like, what have I been doing? And then you follow that with the scene of him seeing his death. You follow that with all these kind of moments of him just finding the kind of gravitas. And I think his relationship to Mobius is incredibly beautiful in the way that it feels like the first time that Loki's got a friend that isn't Thor and like isn't his brother. It's just somebody who understands him and like willing to give him a chance and sort of say, you're better than this. And you could be something if you just put your mind to it. And I read somewhere as well that I can't remember whether it was the director that said this, but the hug between him and Mobius just before they sort of leave each other in that penultimate episode, when I watched it, I was like, there's a lot of emotion there, which I really like more emotion than I think I've seen on a Marvel screen since, like, you know, Infinity War.
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
God. And I read that part of the reason for it was that because they were filming during COVID, neither of the actors could hug anybody. And so they sort of used that moment as like, this is our hug. And I think you can really see it, that not just as like characters, but as actors, there's like a real respect and just like we've done something that is a labor of love. And it's
they all seem to really enjoy it. It's a really good thing I didn't know that, so that's awesome. But
yeah,
you can see from the behind the scene things and reading about the director going off to visit Tom Hiddleston and talk about just to talk about his character and what they're going to do. And you know, that's why it's going to get a season 2, isn't it? Because it's a resounding success. And I think the only thing that for me is a bit I feel a little bit odd about is obviously we've got Shang-Chi and the Eternals coming up next, and I feel like how can you switch off from what's just happened now in Loki
I said that
to get to this point, because obviously there's the main timeline, right? So Loki is somewhere, like I was trying to say, in a very confusing way. I think the TVA is still focusing on the main timeline, which I don't think has necessarily been affected. I think it's still running. Like on that timeline, like everything is going accordingly, because if Loki is still alive on that timeline, that changes everything for the next Thor film and everything. So I think that is still intact, but they don't realize these branches are breaking off at the moment, which is, I think the first time we'll see it is obviously Spider-Man 3, when all this stuff is going to start happening, because you've got Doctor Strange into Spider-Man 3, haven't you? So all of this stuff will be going on, and something in that end credits will lead to Doctor Strange 2, whether it's Loki showing up or not, Loki saying, hey, I'm at the TVA. There's this big bad guy called Kang, who is now front and center of the TVA because of something we did. And obviously everyone's going to untrust Loki again and all this stuff. But to watch Shang-Chi, and obviously you're going to have to, I mean, Shang-Chi, I'm very excited about Shang-Chi. I wasn't originally, but now I'm quite excited. I really like Shang-Chi, but I wasn't impressed with the first trailer, more so with the second trailer. And I think with that in Eternals, it's like people are going to be thinking, I just need to get to Spider-Man 3. Like I have to have more of what's going on now, because it's just, I know COVID has shifted everything around. Like we said, like it was supposed to be Falcon and the Winter Soldier first, and then you were supposed to get Black Widow and all this stuff. So it just feels like it's a bit scrambled now. It's like, I almost wish Shang-Chi and Eternals had come out before Loki. So then we had Loki, and then Loki would lead into, even if there was a series just to break it up a little bit, like a Hawkeye or a Ms. Marvel or something that was maybe didn't have so much, because Hawkeye is probably very linked to Black Widow. So if there wasn't much to, like, it doesn't have a huge effect on what's coming next. But
I wonder if that's it. I wonder if, because I could see the Eternals being linked to this. Like if they've said they've stayed out of society and out of all the kind of shit that's gone on until now, is that because of the multiverse? Is it because things are branching and they're kind of going, shit, this is something to pull us out now, like we need to correct something that is going wrong that we can see? And Shang-Chi sort of acts as just, here's a character who's in a sense going to be integral to the MCU down the road. So maybe, you know, post credits, maybe something there is setting him up for the wider picture. But he's sort of the palate cleanser of like, look, something massive's just happened. Here's this. Then you've got.
I think palate cleanser is the right. You're right there. That is the right way to look at it, like a palate cleanser. Which is like after Infinity War, we got Captain Marvel, didn't we? And although that was important, and like after Endgame, you got Spider-Man. But I think someone did say to me that obviously with Shang-Chi and the Eternals, obviously trying to set up new heroes to replace the ones that we don't have, like Iron Man and Captain America, and obviously they're going to be, especially Shang-Chi. I would assume the next Avengers lineup will have, you know, Spider-Man, Shang-Chi, Falcon, Winter Soldier potentially, and things like that. So you are right, and that's what someone said to me as well, that these will be important players down the line. I just kind of wish Loki went into. It's probably just me being eager to see what comes next, but I would have loved that to be shifted. And I wonder where Loki season 2 falls in, because Spider-Man 3 is out at the end of the year. Doctor Strange 2 is out
March,
I think. So do you try and get Loki season 2? Because they've wrapped it now. Well, it's done and dusted, and they're probably moving on to some other things with it. But, you know, could you start filming Loki? Because Doctor Strange 2 I think it's still filming now. I think
it is. I don't think they've finished.
Do they go straight from that into Loki season 2, and then you have Loki season 2 happen before Doctor Strange 2? So you've got something in between the two of them, but who knows? I am not Kevin Feige. I don't have the answers. I'm just thinking, what do you do with Loki season 2 after Doctor Strange 2?
I think it's definitely a curious one in terms of what they can do. And I think because I saw Black Widow again a couple of days ago, because I went with Harry, who hadn't seen it. So we watched it again, and when I was watching it, sort of having seen the finale of Loki, I was just sort of like, when you see the post credits, you're like, I just don't care. Like, there's a bigger thing going on, and I would rather that be the thing. Like Allegra as a character, Allegra Valentino, whatever her name is. It's just like, you're small. Like, in comparison to what has just gone on, like in comparison to He Who Remains, your character means fuck all.
It's going to be something on the ground, though, isn't it? She has to be linked to. There has to be a link to someone like.
I mean, she's basically playing Lady Hydra, right?
Yeah, she is.
Yeah. And I just kind of think like it's not wasting of time, but it's sort of like it just doesn't go anywhere. Like, especially after you've got a series like Loki, where you're kind of going, this is like super emotional, super heartfelt, super personal. That's what Hawkeye should be. Hawkeye should be, again, follow that plotline, but just about Hawkeye. Don't give me this bullshit. Yelena's coming after and fucking Allegra is involved. Like, just tell me a personal story that ends with Hawkeye going like, look, I'm going fucking deaf. Somebody's got to replace me, because there could be another Thanos out there. There could be something else out there. And if there is, I need to know that this mantle of what I've built holds up. And I feel like the Allegra thing is not wasting time, but you should have just done it earlier. Because what you've got now is this big multiverse thing. And that's the thing that I feel like all these TV shows should sort of be not linked to, but sort of the reason that it's like the Avengers have gone through this huge thing, and there is in a sense a hole of they haven't really been replaced. Like, Cap's gone. I know you've got the new Cap now, but he doesn't have an Avengers. Natasha's gone. Thor's buggered off. There's a hole there. And I feel like these shows should almost be these people going like, somebody needs to step up. And in the background of that, then you're kind of going like, the reason they need to step up, like as the audience, is you're going like, yeah, you've got something that's going to hit really fucking hard and disrupt everything.
You said it before when we spoke that, I do agree with you with there's something missing, but some of the stuff that's going on in TV shows is I think will tie into Secret Invasion, which I think will be the big TV show that's coming up with the cast they've got coming on. But you know, effectively, what everything is missing at the moment is the Infinity Stones. That was the thing that linked everything to Endgame. Every film had a consequence that was built, whether it was something like Thor: Dark World, which introduced the ether and everything like that. And I think that's what I had. And at the moment, we don't have that. But what I think Loki has done is, and what I think you'll see, maybe not with Shang-Chi and stuff, but there should always be something in the credits that links to all of this, shouldn't there? There should be. The end credits to Shang-Chi, whether he gets approached by someone like Nick Fury, or if someone else approaches him, someone from the other universe or the multiverse or something, everything needs to link, regardless of how small or big it is. But I think not having the Infinity Stones, that is something we don't have at the moment. I do think because of the rejigging of the MCU now with COVID, I think it's probably not quite as streamlined as it could have been. I
just feel like the multiverse and the branching of the timelines could be the Infinity Stones. It could be the new Infinity Stones, but in the sense that the Infinity Stones are like big world ending, whereas the multiverse is just, you don't know what's there. It's the unknown.
You put Thanos in a different situation. He wouldn't, if Loki says in the show, doesn't he? He says the timeline is, that's it. That's like, this is the biggest thing. Like all this time, with Thanos focusing on Infinity Stones and him focusing on conquering the world, the timeline, that's the thing. And that's what Kang has worked out, isn't he? For all his variations and everything, that he's realized that's the timeline is the most important thing.
Yeah, so, and I feel like that's the thing that they should really just hone in on now for the next like 5 years, is saying that all of these characters who have gone through this huge endgame level thing are now hit with this, which is unknown. Like with Thanos, it's sort of like, you need him to not get the Infinity Stones. You need to stop him. You need to do all this. But the multiverse is genuinely like the complete unknown, because with Kang, you could meet a version of him that's not too awful, but he's still out to get something. Or you could meet Kang the Conqueror, who is like gonna ruin your day.
There has to be the bigger end. Like we said with Secret Wars, like if Kang is the thing that is the bad that's wrecking the timelines, then you have to. You could easily fit Doctor Doom in there, who wants to harness this as well, and he wants to have control over everything. He wants to be the next Kang.
Yeah.
Whether that ends in, like you said, in 5 years' time with something like Galactus basically coming to devour everything.
Yeah. I feel like in the kind of more concise way, I think, of what I've been trying to say is that I think after Endgame, what I have always wanted the MCU to do, and what Loki has done perfectly, is it needs to go more personal. It needs to be about these people who are left over in the wake of this huge thing, figuring out who they are and where they fit in the world, what their purpose is, like why they're the superhero that they are, that kind of thing. And then give them the next thing, and then go, okay, I sort of know who I am, but this has hit me, and now I need to step up and fight against it, which is Loki. Loki starts at the start of it with this, I am gonna fucking rule the TVA because that is everything. And then by the end of it, he's like, I sort of know who I am, and I'm now the person who is very aware of how effective things can get by decisions. And this is the biggest decision anybody could have to make. And I haven't taken the time or the chance to kind of properly think about it. And now it's gone wrong.
I think they are clearing up a little bit. I mean, for all of our sort of negatives about Falcon and Winter Soldier, obviously it took a long time to get there, but they got Falcon in the Captain America seat now.
Yeah.
Got Bucky Barnes has cleared his slate in a way, so he's on the right track. Obviously, you've got Scarlet Witch. She hasn't got any lingering things now. And obviously, Peter Parker's arc and Far From Home, obviously, they could have done the Iron Man stuff again and again, but they've put him on a different path now as well, although he's a bit screwed because everyone knows who he is. But like, I feel like they've done it, but I'm a big believer that if you ended with Spider-Man Far From Home, and if it had gone according to plan, which was Falcon and Winter Soldier and Black Widow, plus the end credits in those, then if you had then gone into WandaVision and then into Loki, I guess Eternals would have been out as well. I think it would have flowed a lot better.
I think the thing would have been clearer. As you say, I think you'd know more where they're going with it. I think it's the way that it's been done, in that Falcon and Winter Soldier, I feel like there is a, as I've said before, there's a better version of that story, and I feel like if they'd followed the Loki, it's your show,
The Loki.
I feel like if they'd followed the Loki route and kept it more personal and more about these people trying to figure themselves out rather than these big action set pieces, and then Falcon and Winter Soldier ends in a piece of dialogue trying to rouse the country. They're trying to back this new Captain America, but it feels hollow because the rest of the season has just been fucking nothing. Whereas Loki ends on a piece of dialogue that you're just kind of like means everything after what the characters have gone through. And I think that is the testament between taking your time and developing your characters and developing what they want and what they need and go through. And Loki felt like Empire Strikes Back. It felt like these people start with this thing that they know they're fighting against and this thing that's happening, and then something shifts and they're like, okay, we've got this all wrong. And it ends on this kind of like, shit, things have gone south. And I feel like that's a good kind of place as well to, at some point when we jump to He-Man, I think He-Man does the exact same. Like, I think Masters of the Universe does the exact same. It's got that same sensibility. I really, really respect Loki because it didn't fall into the trap of being just another MCU entry. It was its own thing. It holds up, and I'd happily watch it again.
Yeah, the stakes are really high, weren't they? Which is
so high. But you didn't know that at the start. That's the beauty of it. Like, it starts, and you're kind of like, I literally don't know what this show is going to be about. And it just develops and develops, and yeah, I just absolutely love it. Also, before we do move on to Master of the Universe, I have to give them a special shout out because fucking genius that they put on the Thanos helicopter.
Oh yeah, Thanos copter, yeah.
That awesome. Is the coolest thing you could do.
There are loads of Easter eggs, aren't they? The whole drop, whatever it's called, the void. That's what it's called. Yeah, they had Yellow Jacket's helmet was in there as well.
Yeah, I saw that. Cool. Yeah.
There are loads of little nods, which is fantastic, and that all takes time, doesn't it? It's all time to say, right, let's put that here and let's do this here. And fantastic! What a fantastic! I mean, that if I liked the episode, I really liked the Void episode because I just thought it was so. Again, they hit the right notes, the right beats. It didn't outstay its welcome either, and just what a cool thing as well with these shows, especially that they're giving us all these old school costumes as well, like classic Loki, Scarlet Witch, Vision. Obviously, we've had Captain America in his before as well, Luke Cage in the Netflix shows. So it's a great. Although there are some pockets of, they could do this and they could do that, and what we hope for and everything, and anything could change. But it's a great time to have a show like Loki, which you never would have thought when Thor came out, the Kenneth Branagh one that was obviously the first Thor film. You never would have thought we'd be here in, I don't know, what is it, 10 years time?
Yeah.
And Tom Hiddleston as Loki would be as awesome as everyone knew he was going to be.
Yeah, really cool. And the last thing I've got to say about Loki is the scene where Tom Hiddleston sings.
That's a good scene.
Fucking good. Like, pitch perfect. And again, there's like a somberness. I feel like the whole show, there is a somber feeling to it. Yeah. And that just wasn't what I was expecting at all. And it blew me away. I fucking loved it.
I was a little bit gutted because in the trailer you could see, it turns out it's Sylvie when the end of that planet's happening and it's purple and she's sitting down. In the trailer that looked like Black Widow. I was really sure there was going to be like Loki somehow ending up in this place where Black Widow's soul or something is. So although it worked out much better, but I was so sure it was going to happen. So,
yeah, I was pretty sure it was going to be Lady Loki. So we were both wrong. But yeah.
So what would you give it a consistent okay rating? What would you say? I feel that this is going to be your highest MCU rating so far.
I think I'd give it a 9.
Oof, that's big.
Which I think is what I gave the Snyder Cut. I think.
Oof. Oh dear.
I mean, it's amazing. But yeah, fine.
I'd give it an 8.
Ooh, gosh, I'm higher than you. That's rare.
You are. It's rare, yeah.
Gosh.
I would have gone 10 until you said 9.
I mean, you gave Batman and Robin a 10.
Oh, so good. I would give it an 8, just only because I think there's more to come. I think season 2 could be just as good. So I'm always room for improvement, Nick, unless it's Civil War, which is perfect.
No. I talked about it the other night, by the way, just after seeing Black Widow, and I was like, yeah, Civil War.
It's no Civil War. Oh,
like,
God. No, it isn't. Watch it again. Watch it, and then when you see Queens pop up, just be like, oh, yeah.
I actually, no, when that does pop up, I'm like, that's really cool. And then I'm sort of just pissed off because I know that their version of Peter Parker is awful. But, it's fine.
No, it isn't.
I mean,
right, let's move on from this madness. Let's step away from the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Loki and dive headfirst into something we've never talked about on the show. We've never brought up He-Man before, but the new Netflix series, Masters of the Universe Revelation.
So, before we jump in, actually, there's one thing about Loki that I hadn't mentioned that I've just thought of, and I wanted to make sure I said it because I just thought it was fucking amazing. In the first episode, there's the shot of the TVA, and it like pans through a window and then looks out across the whole TVA, and there's like the cars flying, and there's just like basically a city or something.
Yeah.
That shot, when I saw that, I was like, this is incredible. And part of it was because they stayed on it so long. Like, I feel like in MCU films or in anything else, it would have been kind of a quick, they'll show you it, they'll pan, that's it. This like lingers on what the TVA is, and everything's sort of like living, breathing, moving. And then the score, which I've talked about previously as well, but the score for that exact moment, it hits correctly, where it's this like weird ambiance, kind of unsettling thing. And I thought it was such a cool introduction to the place, because you just feel like something sinister is going on. And yeah, I just thought it was awesome as a visual. So
nice.
Had to
feel like I need to go back and watch it now.
It's so cool. It's just like such a bizarre thing. And yeah, in the first episode, I was like, bold, like it, different.
So we're ending the Loki part of the episode by talking about the beginning of Loki.
Yes.
Which is how all episodes should wrap up when they talk about a section.
Exactly.
So I'll check it out. I bloody love the score. I know we've said that already, but it's so good.
Yeah, I listen to it so much. It's so good, so good.
Shall we dive into the second half of this glorious episode?
Let's do it. We have the power.
We do have the power. So
yeah.
we're going to talk about Masters of the Universe Revelation, which just landed on Netflix. It's 5 episodes long. First part 1 out of 2. So I've no idea when the second part's coming. But
I think I've heard a rumor that it is either the end of the year or beginning of next, because I was watching an interview with Kevin Smith, who, for anybody who doesn't know, he basically outlined the show. He showrunned it. He said in this interview that the reason Netflix split it into 2 halves is in the chance that there is a second season, there isn't as long a wait between seasons.
That makes sense.
So he's
smart, Kevin.
He's not confirming a second season, but he's saying that there's a intention, I guess. Yeah.
All right. Well, if anyone who doesn't know about He-Man and Masters Universe, this particular Netflix show is a sequel, or I guess a direct sequel from the original 1983 television show, which was 2 seasons long. It was 65 episodes, I think. 65 or 85. I think it was 65 episodes. And there's been a few different spin-offs since then, like She-Ra and everything has all come over the last few years. Yeah. But this is a direct sequel, and there's also been a comic which ties that original run and this run together, which is coming out now through Dark Horse Comics. So they're only on issue 1 at the time we're recording this. Issue 2 is just around the corner. And the original series focused heavily on He-Man and Skeletor, and the comic is also focused on He-Man.
Nice.
But this show doesn't really focus that much on He-Man. Now, like we said with everything else, like the Loki stuff as well, there are spoilers because we're just going to have to. There's no way around the spoilers.
Yes.
This series doesn't really have He-Man in it.
No.
Or Skeletor.
No.
But so I'm going to set it out now.
Mm.
I have a lot of positives about this show. I also have some negatives about this show. So, do you want to be all positive first, and then I'll join in?
I can do, yeah. So going into this, I hadn't religiously watched He-Man. In that, I think I've seen the odd episode. I'd completely forgotten until recently when I watched an interview with Kevin Smith that the show back in the 80s was like a moral show, that it would end with them telling you a moral, which I had just completely blanked out. I just didn't remember that. And so going into this, I was sort of a bit worried that I was going to be a bit kind of drowning in I don't understand. But I think the show does a good job of just easing you into it. I think it's sort of like, this is the setup. They've got that awesome intro.
The intro is fantastic.
Which is done by, I think it's Liam Cunningham who does
I think it is, yeah.
That's just, the minute I started watching it, I was like, this is fucking amazing. I also felt like a kid because I was watching it eating cereal in the morning.
Cereal. I watched it with cereal as well.
Yes. Oh, classic.
The reverse kid.
Yeah.
The intro is great. I love it. It made you feel like you're watching like an old Toys R Us advert or something.
Yeah. And the score was incredible. Like Bear McCreary doing the score is huge. It was sort of hard not to watch it, I think, and be like a little bit pumped. It was like, yeah, fucking yeah.
Let's do this.
And one of the things that I really want to do is, because I know they've had a push on this, and so I want to kind of like make sure we're acknowledging it, is this show is very much a writer's show. So in the first 5, there's obviously 5 writers. So the first episode is written by Kevin Smith, who, if nobody knows him, where have you been? He's awesome. I really like Kevin Smith. He wrote and directed things like Clerks, Mallrats, Jay and Silent Bob. The second episode is written by Dia Mishra. The third episode is written by Mark Bernardin. Fourth episode is Tim Sheridan, who we'll probably be talking about some of his work later on because he's done the Batman
Long Halloween.
Yeah. In our in-depth stories. And the fifth episode is written by Adam Carrasco. I could be really wrong on that, but
I'm not very good with surnames. We already know this.
Yeah, it's fine.
We'll say his name's Carrasco.
Yeah. And yeah, so I went into it blind, didn't really know what to expect. And I just found myself really loving it. I thought it was bold. I thought the fact that they killed He-Man and Skeletor in the first episode was like, oh, shit. Okay. I thought it was really epic the way it was done as well. I just thought it was big, bold storytelling. I thought it was interesting how they do He-Man as sort of like a memory through the episodes, that you sort of have some flashback. I thought it was good. It didn't always fit, but I thought it was fine and it was kind of cool. Yeah. The voice cast is insane. I think everybody nails that really well. And I thought in terms of storytelling, it's really big, it's bold, takes chances. And also, I know it's had a lot of criticism, which I'm sure we'll get to, but I think a lot of people are forgetting that this is the first part, that they wrote 10 episodes. They haven't written 5 and then released them. They've written 10 episodes. And so I feel like a lot of the criticism that's being thrown at it is like, well, you haven't seen the whole story yet, so you can't judge. Like, they didn't plan it to be released in 2 parts. They wrote 10 episodes. So
that's where I strongly agree with you, because I think if this all came out as 10 episodes, I don't think it would have got as much of the criticism as it has, because the episodes are quite short.
Yeah.
I watched all 5 in, I think you and I spoke after I'd seen them. I think I watched them all within like 2 or 3 hours, whatever it adds up to be, back to back. And it was done within a blink. And I think if you had the other 5 episodes straight after, then you would probably see a full, complete story.
Yeah.
And there wouldn't be so much outrage about it.
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't released it like that. So there is going to be a bit of outrage because there are a lot of people that are big fans of things from the 80s or just He-Man in general. And I didn't watch He-Man religiously when I was younger. I've watched every episode, and I rewatched quite a bit of it when I was at university. I think at least the first season.
Nice.
I collect a lot of crap, but He-Man has never really been on my list. I've got some figures somewhere, but not. It wasn't for me. I was wrestling figures and superhero figures, Power Rangers, and all that stuff was my bag.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure, like now, I would probably get them if I come up. They're re-releasing loads of them anyway. But I love Skeletor. I think he's such an awesome character. I've actually read a lot about Skeletor, and some stuff I do have is Skeletor related. I think he's a really cool villain.
Yeah.
But for me, with this, I loved the animation. I thought the animation was great.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the music. I loved the score. I liked quite a lot of the writing as well. I loved the intro. I loved the first episode, apart from the ending.
Interesting. Okay.
I didn't enjoy the middle that much.
Okay.
But then I really liked the 4th and 5th episodes, which are obviously building, if you'd seen all 10. Kind of similar to what we said about the MCU shows, where there's always an episode in the middle which picks up again, which is typically it's been like the episode 4 of most of these things. The thing that frustrated me is that during the whole episodes, that I kept thinking that He-Man and Skeletor were going to pop back up again. I didn't think they'd be gone for that long, even though it was so short, obviously. But you know what I mean. It felt in terms of the episodes, and it definitely turned into what everyone's saying, and probably wrongly so, like the Teela show, not He-Man and Skeletor. For me, it's frustrating because everything advertised about this show had He-Man at the center of it, with Skeletor overlooking him, and all these other characters were on the sides. And yes, like you said, it was probably supposed to come out all in one go, so the advertising probably isn't right, but it is for this. They could have changed some of the promotion, and Kevin Smith heavily pushed this as in this is He-Man and Skeletor. That's what he did. And a lot of these diehard fans and borderline diehard fans and things are up in arms about it. And that is not playing words for Man of Arms, but they are up in arms because it's not what they wanted. And obviously you can't cater to everyone. We're looking at a whole new generation now. I mean, this is going to be parents watching them with their kids, and the kids being introduced to it. And if you've just started watching it, like you said, you're fairly new to it, I'm sure it works like it, and it has done. Obviously it's got hugely popular reviews on critics, and a lot of it is wrongly so been bombed, like they did with things like Captain Marvel and stuff, because there's a bandwagon, a lot of people have jumped on it. If I was reviewing it as a fan of He-Man, but not a diehard fan, I would give it a good score, because a lot of it does work. But I was really disappointed in the He-Man and Skeletor parts, because while I liked the flashbacks, it just didn't feel right. And it's a difficult conversation to have, I guess, because you're essentially changing something that is almost a male role model in cartoons, in He-Man, fighting for good and everything that, and you're taking that away and giving that space to another character who is portrayed quite differently in this compared to what she was in the original cartoons. And it just feels, I'm trying to word this correctly, but it feels like they made these storyline choices to set up the Teela story, whereas some of this stuff would just never have happened in the original cartoon. Like Man of Arms would never have just sort of accepted defeat and gone, and the king would have never sent them away. And the fact that Teela just abandons everything so easily as well, when everything is in trouble at Castle Grayskull, she just is like, no, you've all lied to me and I'm off now. That sort of stuff didn't sit well with me, because I thought it was they've just taken it in a completely different direction. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you. Intriguing.
Sorry. No, you go.
No, you go.
I'm more so on the fence that I enjoyed it than I didn't enjoy it, but I can while I wouldn't be so harsh on it like so many people that I've talked to have been, or I've read about. I do completely get it. I do think Kevin Smith has sort of maneuvered this in the wrong way, and I think he's reacted poorly to the criticism as well. Rather than saying that he is like, I think if he was the diehard fan that he's telling everyone that he is, it probably would have been done differently as him being the showrunner. But I think he has catered to trying to make it more relevant to the masses, which makes sense. We say this all the time about everything, don't we? We say it about, a lot of the Marvel films as well. A lot of it's trying to get asses in seats. They want eyes on the product, don't they? Yeah. And it's fantastic. It is fantastic that they've presented all these characters have got a bit of spotlight in this show, apart from He-Man and Skeletor. And I think that's probably it in this sums up, is that all these other characters have these moments, and they don't give the main characters, the two biggest characters in this, He-Man and Skeletor, just don't get their time to shine. And it probably will happen in part 2. Obviously, we saw at the end of part 1 that Skeletor becomes Skelegod, which is pretty awesome. But then straight away, the little bit of hope that you're going to get He-Man again is lost, because then he's killed again. And it's sort of like, when are we going to get He-Man? Like the main person on the poster, the thing that all the action figures coming out for again. And when are we going to get him in this in this show? And that's where I feel a little bit, betrayed is too strong a word. I just feel a bit let down. One of my closest friends where I live, I'll name drop him, his name is Cor. He's such a cool guy, and he loves so much stuff that I love as well. And he was really annoyed about this whole thing. And I completely saw where he was coming from. Again, him more so than I was. But there are people like him that you can look on YouTube and everything like that, and you can see how frustrated people are on these videos. But some of them take it a bit too far, I think. But I think a lot of them have a right to be disappointed. Because I was disappointed, like I said. I'm not even a huge fan, I'm just a fan. So it was just a shame. So I really liked the first episode, and then it ended the way it did, and I thought, right, second episode is still good, but it's just, okay, cool. Like, I love the interaction between Evil Lynn and all the other characters as well, but then just, I wanted it to be He-Man and Skeletor more involved. I feel like I really rambled there, but maybe not in a constructive way, but I'm trying to get across that I liked it, whilst also I felt a bit disheartened.
So intriguingly, I'm pretty much the exact opposite. I had only really heard about the story from Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin from watching Fat Man Beyond, and so I knew going into it that it was the Teela story, because they'd been really upfront about it. They were like, this is Teela's story, because we felt like in the original show she was somebody who didn't get the spotlight, and they were saying how the show was called Masters of the Universe and the show highlighted He-Man, but not Teela, and so they thought they had an in there. I didn't realize that Adam was never in the original series. That came from DC Comics, which I was like, shit, I always assumed that was just there, but apparently it wasn't. And also the two people who picked Kev to run it are like the biggest He-Man Masters of the Universe fans. They're like two people at Mattel who just absolutely love it. And he pitched them this story, and they were like, this is what we want. Like, as a kid, I wanted to see Skeletor fight He-Man, and I never really saw it. I wanted the story to be taken seriously, and it wasn't there as an adult. Like, when you watch He-Man back, it is basically just in and out episodes with then a moral code.
Yep.
And they were like, we need somebody to take this property seriously. And I also knew going into it that the show was originally called The End of the Universe.
Yeah, and I remember hearing that as well.
And so I was like, right, this thing is going to be dark. Like, if they've called it originally The End of the Universe, something's going to happen. And so when He-Man dies at the end and takes Skeletor as well, first of all, it was just awesome to see them fight. I was like, that's really cool. And the way that they go, I just thought was this big, epic fucking thing. and it reminded me so much of Bat Soups and Justice League. Like, if those three films are about Superman, Superman's in Justice League for what, like 25, 30 minutes at most?
Yeah.
But the film is about him. And that's the same way that I think that these first 5 are about He-Man, in the sense that it's about a world without He-Man. It's how does the world without He-Man work? And how does the world work without magic? And that's the thing that I think I loved so much, is that it was like, the second half could be the opposite. The second half could be this, like, the world is returning to magic. We're going to get magic back. We're going to fight Skeletor. We're going to win. We're going to get He-Man. It's going to be this trajectory of, like, here we go. But I think, like anything where there's a story, you have to break things to then put them back together. And I think, like I've always said to you with the MCU, my issue with that is the consequences. I think, you know, Infinity War and Endgame are huge for consequences. It's this big thing. But then the other flicks don't always have that same thing. It's sort of like this big event happens and then it's not referred to. And then this big thing happens and it's not. And that always struggles with me a little bit. I prefer things to kind of be like, this is hit hard, this is hit really hard, this is where people are at. And I think that's what this first 5 does, is it's like Empire Strikes Back. It's these heroes are living in a world that they're trying to fight against, but it's not working. And it ends on a tone where you're like, well, they're fucked, but I'm still going to come back and watch the other 5 because I'm curious about that trajectory of getting to where they want to be.
I mean, everyone's going to watch. Even the people that hate it are going to watch the next 5 because they won't, not will they? Because they're going to. But you said there that, you know, you wanted to see He-Man when the Mattel people and Kevin Smith spoke and things, that wanted to see He-Man. I can't keep saying He-Man. He-Man and Skeletor. But yes, we got that in the first episode. But for people that wanted to watch it with their kids and stuff, be like, this is this thing. It's just a bit different. It's almost, I think it's, I agree with the breaking stuff down to rebuild it, but if that was the case, then they should have just done it as 10 episodes. So quickly, everyone could have been like, okay, so it's broke, but guess who's coming around the corner? Like, He-Man's going to be back any minute now, because that is what a lot of people want to focus on. That's what I've got no problem with female heroes, and I've got no problem with them being center attention as well. But I wanted to see He-Man more, even if it is going to come in the later 5 episodes like this. If we don't get this till 2022 now, we're just not going to get that fix that this was promoting. And, you know, someone who works in a comic shop, with everything you can get around this, there's barely anything to do with Teela, and there's a shit ton of stuff to do with He-Man that you can get. Yeah. You know, and that's if you're trying to sell that to boys or girls who want to buy He-Man stuff, you'd be like, oh yeah, but they're like, oh yeah, he wasn't in it. But yeah, not really. He's dead. Yeah. Dead as Dodo.
Yeah.
But it's just, but everything you said, the way you've unpacked it is, I agree. It's great and it's spot on, and it makes complete sense. And again, if we had recorded this podcast maybe after I hadn't talked to a few people, maybe I would have felt a bit similar in a way as well. But because I've watched it a second time and I've talked and I've thought about it more, I feel like I'm in 2 different places with it to what I originally thought when I first watched it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that happens with a lot of things, I think, when it's sort of like you have time to settle on it. And I think especially whenever you binge things, I feel like when you binge something, it's sort of like, that was awesome. And then you sort of have time to think about it and you're like, oh, actually, was it?
But that's what I did think. I actually thought we texted in when you said you had a lot you wanted to say about it, like gush over it. And I was like, yeah, me too. And I think I was just really drawn by the animation, and then obviously the 5th episode, you have a bit more He-Man and Skeletor. So I was like, oh, okay, it's kicking off. And I was like, okay, it's done. I was like, okay. And I think when I walked away from it, I was like, oh, I wish it wasn't done. I wish I had known. I wish there was more to it, because, like I said, there's so many, like you said about the voice cast. I thought the voice cast was really, really good. I loved Liam Cunningham as Man-at-Arms. I thought he was such a good voice for that. Lena Headey, she can't go wrong. I think she sounds badass, whatever she's doing as well. But I think, sorry, I'm going off different tangents, but the thing is, because they killed He-Man and they killed Skeletor, they also killed Orko as well, which felt really unnecessary.
I absolutely loved that moment, and I found out then afterwards why they did it, and I was like, fucking hell. So
I mean, I assume he's not dead. I assume he's just been sucked into somewhere else, because he doesn't die, does he? He just gets
yeah, he just
taken
gets
through.
taken through. But so basically, the guys at Mattel, who the ones that hired them, I've forgotten what they're called.
Matt and Al.
Yes, we'll go with that. But yeah, they basically said that Orko was a character that when they were growing up, everyone was like, Orko's just fucking annoying. He's got a really annoying voice. He's just such a pointless character. No one gives a shit. And so they went into this saying, like, we want to make Orko the character that people want to get tattoos of. And then they write him in a way that's just like, there's something so heartfelt about him struggling to live in a world without magic. I really dug that, where I was just like, this is fucking insane. And like Man at Arms being the one who's like, I'm trying to look after you, and him being like, I'll sacrifice myself to help you guys, kind of thing. I really fucking loved that. But again, because I hadn't watched the original, I had nothing to compare it to, other than like, I knew that they sort of considered this more as like a spiritual sequel. And this show was pitched at, again, from watching interviews, they pitched this show at the adults who'd grown up with it, rather than, I think there's another He-Man show coming.
There is something else coming out.
They've said that is basically the one that's like for new fans and for, you know, kids and everything, whereas this is pitched as the like spiritual sequel to the one that you used to watch.
That's where I think they've got it a little bit wrong as well, because I think that's where I think a lot of people are annoyed. I've seen a lot more. Again, it's really hard these days, isn't it? It's really tough to tell the sort of trolls from the hardcore fans. Like, anyone would jump on a bandwagon, but the 3 or 4 people that I'm close to that have spoken about it, that I knew were fans growing up, none of them have liked it.
Intriguing.
So that's probably what's made me feel a bit like, okay. And then I've been sent links, and I've watched my own links, and there's just a lot of hostility towards it. But I've read a lot of good stuff as well, and I've watched a lot. I watched the Netflix thing as well.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if it was it was the one with Kevin Smith in the studio, basically.
Yeah.
And that made me think, right, okay, then these guys are dedicated and stuff. But it's probably wrong to think that Kevin Smith lied to people, but it definitely feels like he's in the early days, anyway, from what I've seen, is that he's swayed it towards this is He-Man. Obviously, you've said on what you've listened to with the Fat Man podcast that he said this was a Teela show.
Yeah, the thing that because in the build up to the show, he kept getting flack from people who were like, had read a rumor that they were like, He-Man dies, or no, He-Man's not in it. It's about Teela, and Teela wields the sword. And he was like, it is a Teela show, but she doesn't ever
get the
sword, which she doesn't. She gets half the sword, which isn't the sword because it doesn't have the fucking power, right? And so he was like, the show is gonna be about He-Man, and I don't think that's a lie, because the show is about He-Man in the sense that Justice League's about Superman. It's like, here's this figure who is at the center of everything, and what is the world like without him? And I love that the world gets bleak without him, that the world is like, people are struggling, and that everybody, like, people are trying to get on the last ditch of magic, and they're trying to just get, by. I love that shit. I really like it when you sort of take somebody out of an equation and you say that the world isn't as good without them. And He-Man
it's like Dark Knight Rises, isn't it? It's a good example.
It's take
Batman out of Gotham, it falls apart.
Yeah, and you can see that. You can see like all the writers where their influences are coming from. Like they're coming from. It's coming from Lord of the Rings. It's coming from Batman. It's coming from Superman. It's coming from all these areas of pop culture that have grown since He-Man. And I think that is what really grabbed me with it, is that it was just kind of like, it felt like they were just telling a story that they all absolutely loved, because they were like, this is a show about redemption. It's a show about us showing the importance of He-Man without having He-Man on the screen. And I think when you get to that payoff, like you got a little bit, I think, in the 5th episode when Adam rocks up and he's like, "I'm coming with you," and you're like, "Fucking yes."
Yeah,
you
did get a bit, but what if we don't get what if we see the next 5 episodes and there's still no He-Man really? What if it's Teela versus Skeletor and then we don't get any He-Man? I know we think we will, obviously, but what if there isn't? What if it's just...
Yeah, based on everything I've seen so far, I don't think there is. I'm fairly certain you're going to get He-Man, and I'm fairly certain it's going to be in a big way.
Do you promise everyone?
I can do my best. In the having watched interviews, like Kevin Smith did a special on it on He-Man, on his Fat Man Beyond podcast, and he had the guy who voiced Orko.
Yeah, what's his name?
Griffin
something.
Yes, I've forgotten his name. He was awesome though. And he did all of, I didn't realize this, so the voice on the original cartoon was
Griffin Newman.
Griffin Newman, that's it. The voice on the original cartoon was one of the animators or one of the producers or directors or something, and then they put his voice through a digital thing to get it that high pitched.
Oh yeah, I read that as well.
And Griffin Newman just did his own voice, like he actually went that high pitched with it. I was like, that's awesome. Like he's committed to it. But yeah, like they're talking about it, and he keeps saying, anybody who watches TV, you will know what we're doing. And I think that's true. I think you can see it, is that if this had been released like 10 episodes, you'd get to that midway point and be like, this is just fucking crazy. And then it will just keep getting elevated to the point where you're going to get the big He-Man and Skeletor fight.
Well, I don't think even the diehard fans, I still don't think they would even be necessarily happy. But I think a bigger majority of people would be like, okay, so it wasn't the start that I wanted, but fuck me, that ending was fantastic. And that's what I want to see. Like I said, I don't mind this build up. I miss a lot of the He-Man and Skeletor thing because that's what I really wanted. Like from seeing the because the trailer essentially was just the first episode.
Yeah.
So when you saw that trailer and you had the soundtrack in the background, the I Need a Hero soundtrack in the background, it's a lot of He-Man. He's got the power, and Skeletor's got his fists coming out of the sky. It's all the first episode.
Yeah.
And that is, for me, that obviously when you see that trailer, I thought that was probably going to be spread out over several episodes, but it wasn't. And I was kind of like, I was waiting for more of that to come my way. And, but I love, like I said, the 4th episode of stuff. I love the bit when they're when they're searching for the sword and they go through they all have their little trials and everything like that.
Yeah.
But that was really good. And I liked the ending as well. I like the Scare the God stuff. And don't get me wrong, Nick, I'm going to be, I'm a sucker. I'm getting the single issues for the comics. I'll probably get the TV, and I'm sure I'll buy all the figures because
I want the figures so badly.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's no way on earth I'm not going to buy that Battle Cat and Skelegod figure. It's going to happen.
Also, didn't realize that's the first time you can have a Battle Cat.
Sweet.
As like the normal, as Cringer as well.
Yeah, cool.
They never did it. You could always just get Battle Cat, and so now because you can have both, I was like, that's awesome.
Perfect. But because I'm really excited about the second part. Like I am probably as excited as I was for the first part. I really thought it was going to go a bit of a different way, and I think a mixture of my expectations not being necessarily hit with the story and the negativity I've had from everyone else as well, which I completely understand as well. Like I'm not, like my friends who've talked about it, I'm not discouraging it because everyone has a right to their view, and I completely see where they're going. But I do think there's a bigger picture. Like if you take the negativity coming from there, not the negativity, that's not the right word, but if you take the anger and how upset they are about the whole thing because they're big fans, and the positivity that you think, and you put that together, and then there's something there. And I really think the second part will improve upon the thing that was a lot of people think were lacking in this first stuff. But unfortunately, the way they have done it, I think a lot of damage has been done with these fans that were, I saw loads of parents, not trolls either, like parents. Like, I watched it with my kids and I couldn't tell them how disappointed I was because, they built it up as a He-Man show. Like, watching it with your son or your daughter and saying like He-Man is this person, this is it, and this is from my childhood, and you're going to love it, and then it's just not what you thought it was going to be.
I think I find it really hard to kind of relate with that, in the sense that I don't know if it's just because I'd watched Fat Man Beyond, but because the show was called Master of the Universe and not He-Man and the Master of the Universe, I was like, oh, there's like, quite early on I was like, well, this is a story about loads of people, right? It's not just about He-Man. If the show was called He-Man and the Master of the Universe, I would have then been like, that's an issue, because the show doesn't have the title in it, but it's not. And so I was a bit like, okay.
But He-Man's front and center of everything. He's the biggest face on every poster.
Yeah, but at the same time, I kind of think this is the Last of Us effect.
Yeah, probably is.
In the like, The Last of Us couldn't show Abby, which is arguably, one of the more interesting halves of that game. Well, an interesting half, because
they've only just started to release figures of Abby. They've only just been announced.
Yeah, which is like, fuck. And I think we said about that in our very first podcast, that there was a backlash to that because nobody could review it. Nobody could talk about the second half of the game in a review. And there was an issue with that because it was, how do you review a game that you're not allowed to talk about? Like, you can talk about the first half, but you're not allowed to talk about the other half. And Abby's half is super interesting. So I feel like there is an element of that with this, where I think people went into it with the expectation of something and got given something that they weren't expecting. But I think if you really look at modern storytelling, I think they're just doing that. I think they've managed to move the characters of Master of the Universe into something that's contemporary. Because I think I would have been the opposite. I think if they'd just released a show and it was just in and out episodes, I think I probably would have been like, it's all right. Like, I wouldn't have dug it. If they'd stuck to, if they'd literally tried to do what the original did, where it was, here's an adventure every week and it's going to end with a moral code, I would have been like, sure, the voice cast is awesome and it looks really nice, but I much prefer when things are taken seriously, and when they kind of take characters and they're like, we're going to put them through the ringer. We're not going to treat them like
I completely agree. I'm glad that it was taken more seriously and stuff, because it wouldn't have worked. The 80s stuff wouldn't have worked now necessarily, which is again what a lot of these big fans need to realize as well, that probably wouldn't have worked now. Like, people now probably wouldn't enjoy that if you're trying to pick up where you left off. There's always going to be changes there, and that is the issue fundamentally with a lot of people, is that they don't want female characters taking over male superhero characters. They don't want new characters thrown in on a comic when the original stuff works just fine. They're not comfortable with change. They want what they're used to, and obviously change usually leads to some amazing stuff. Mm-hmm. We have no idea. You talk about The Last of Us. Yes, everyone was upset about Joel dying and stuff, but we have no idea what they've got planned for part 3.
Yeah,
you have no idea. You have no idea if part 3 there'll be a male protagonist again. That is like a huge part of the story. Like, you have no idea.
With Last of Us, the thing that I think this might do the same is that when you switch and start, obviously you play as Abby at the start, but when you switch back to Abby at the halfway point, and the game's like, okay, we're going to make you like Abby. For the longest time, you're like, I will not like her. She's killed Joel. She's killed Joel, and her and Ellie obviously fight, and I'm not comfortable with this. No.
Yeah, that's what I was saying with our friend Stina as well. I said, you're not comfortable at that point, because all of a sudden you're like, wow, to be fair, Joel killed Abby's boyfriend.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, that's right. No.
Dad.
Yes.
Yep.
Dad. So in that kind of apocalyptic world, fair enough.
And then Ellie kills all of her friends.
So fair enough as well. It's just thing. And I hope you're right. Like, I hope at the end of this, like, a lot of these people, and me as well, are like, okay, Tila is really cool. I just don't feel that invested in her necessarily at the moment. I think maybe towards the end I felt a bit more invested in it, but I just some of it didn't work, especially though episode 2 and 3, and it's not a knock on the writing necessarily, it just didn't work for me. I think it is probably, like I said a million times now, that I was hoping things would go back to normal, but that would have been same old as well. So it's tough to know. And I mean, they're doing it. I mean, everyone's going to be hoping that He-Man is in the next part, isn't it? And that's probably, again, what's going to get asses in seats. It's the hope of these guys. Like, how are you going to stop Skelligod? Well, the only way to do it is to bring He-Man back again.
Yeah.
And obviously the twist here is that the ironic thing is that he left the
like heaven bit.
The heaven bit. Yeah, he left there with the idea that you can't come back now, and he's literally been out for 5 minutes and he's dead again. So now where the fuck's he going to go?
Yeah.
So
that's the thing that I love, is I love that the show gave me all the questions I'd wonder. Like I wouldn't have gone into the show going like, what do you reckon would happen if He-Man died? And then when he dies at the end, I was like, I actually don't know what they do. How do you do this? And then I just found myself loving it. I agree with you to the extent I think Teela's reasoning for like leaving feels quick. I feel like that could have been longer, because the core reason of it, I think, stands. The sense that it's like everybody knew Adam was He-Man except for her, and the way that she found out is when he died.
But that's not a big deal in the. That's the thing. That's not really played up as a big deal in the.
Yeah, that's the thing that they said they clung to first, is that when they went back and watched all the episodes, that stood out to them, that they were like, realize everybody knows except for Teela. Like, the fuck. And I think
just happened too quick.
Yeah, I think if you'd added like an extra bit of time in there in terms of like having the grief, but her being angry and being like, this is like, I've lost somebody that I really like, but they were lying to me for fucking ages. Like, I've fought alongside that person. They didn't trust me with who they are. I think at the core that stands. I almost wish there was an extra 10 minutes of her just being like, literally everything I know is fucked, and now magic's gone.
I think the whole episode needed a bit longer, because everything happened too quickly. Like Skeletor getting into Castle Grayskull easier than he could have. Everything he's done in the past just felt too easy. Bearing in mind, his whole thing is about trying to get in there, and all of a sudden he's in there. So you had that. You had the Teela leaving. You had the King sending Man of Arms away. He-Man and Skeletor. It just all happened so quickly, and obviously just to set the story for this first half of the season. And it's just, I think all of that could have been played out. You could have had a bit more of a dynamic of, okay, so now I found out I'm not happy, but let's see what we can do here. And during the midst of them at odds with each other, that's when Skeletor attacks.
Yeah,
but it happened quickly. And obviously, that is just to get the story set in motion as well. So I see both sides of it. I assume the writers went back and forth a million times about how they handle it, but you have to progress the story quickly, I guess.
I know that
20-minute episodes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
Yeah, I think they're like 25. I know that the end of Kevin Smith's episode, when he wrote it, they had to put in the end part into the beginning of episode 2. So I think there was definitely like a length issue there. I think they struggled with that in the sense that of like how long they could write scripts for. I get the impression they might have gone into it thinking like, we're going to write like an hour-long episode, and then Netflix have sort of been like, it needs to be 30 minutes. And you can totally see it. Like, I could totally see where they would get an hour out of each of those episodes, because there's so much in there that I just think's
the first one could have been an hour long. I think that would have actually set things on a better trajectory for a lot of people. So
when the second half comes out, are you going to rewatch the first half? Are you going to then like watch it all in one?
Yeah, I think I'll do it. I think that's probably the best way to do it. I think for me is so I want to see what it's like all the way through.
Yeah.
So yeah, I probably would do that. Yeah. Would you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, I love these first 5. Like, I'd happily watch them again. And I definitely think that the story is just going to be this redemption thing. I think it's going to be like, here's the big action sequence, here's a world without someone, here's the return, and then here's where things go even worse, and here's where it's going to get fucking epic.
I think they could have done it the other way around though as well. Like, there's a bit of me thinks it could have been like the He-Man Teela dynamic, exploring that for 5 episodes with her finding out, and like I said, Skeletor trying to break in, and then then he dies on the 5th episode as Skeletor dies, and then the second half of the season is right. We're going to try and find a way back to the sword and everything, and then you have a season 2. But again, because I don't know if they're going to have a season 2. If this is just one complete season, then I guess that way around doesn't work. But
yeah,
I just maybe it could have been done a bit differently in my eyes. But yeah,
I think
overall,
I think there's definitely like also watching them interviewed, like the writers' interviews, it does feel like they all did write a lot, and then it sort of just got condensed.
Typical.
Which I think is just always the way when you've got a time limit in terms of, if Netflix is saying we want this to be 30 minutes, then you've got to stick to that. But yeah, I loved how bold it was. I loved all their story takes. As somebody who isn't a He-Man fan and just somebody who just watches a lot of pop culture, it did everything I wanted it to, because it was just, bold storytelling all over, with a great cast.
What would you give it a consistently okay rating of, considering you've given Loki one of your highest ratings yet?
I'd give it the same. I'd give it a 9.
What?
It was everything I wanted from a story in terms of, I love stuff where it challenges you to kind of go, I'm not giving you the same thing that you thought you were going to get,
Yeah.
And I'm going to make you feel something. Like when Orko died, bear in mind I had no connection to Orko at all. But when he died, I was like, fuck. And I loved Man-at-Arms and like his relationship with Teela and how he was just like, there's tension between them. And
I think Evil Lynn is the standout character. Like her journey is
so cool.
Pretty good with obviously she's Skeletor, and then she sort of warms towards the heroes, and then you see that bit at the end where it's kind of like you could tell she kind of doesn't actually want to go off for Skeletor again, but then she's like, you know what? He's pretty sexy.
I also
off I go.
I fucking love that line where I think it's Evil Len and I think it's Teela as well talking, and they're both like, we've both lived in the shadow of 2 people.
Yeah, 2 people. Yeah, that stuff was really good. It was very well written. That stuff was really well written.
That was on the boat as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the boat with so Jason Mewes does he does
Stinkle.
Yes, no, what's his name? Is it Stinkle?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he plays Stinkle.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool as well.
But yeah, I really like that conversation there. That episode felt like where the flashback actually worked quite well, because you sort of have the flashback that sets up that moment. So when you got to that moment, it pays off, because you're like, oh yeah, like the 2 of them have sort of been here and they were here in a completely different circumstance. And I just, I always really like those stories, I think, where people just take somebody out of the equation and then you watch people live in that world when they've lost something. I like the feeling. I don't know what it is. What would you give it?
I'd give it a 6.
A 6. Oof.
6 with room for improvement, I think. I mean, I enjoyed it. I've probably, again, just like I've been mixing up my Loki emotions with what I thought was going to happen in the future. I feel very indifferent. I feel like I don't know if I actually really liked it or I was unhappy with it. I'm just in this middle ground at the moment with it, and it's again from hearing too much from too many people.
I'd honestly say watch the if you've got a chance, just go on Kevin Smith's YouTube and watch his like interviews with the writers, because they talk about where the idea came from and where they sort of found their in for it, and there is a real care. Like one of the writers, I think it's the 2nd episode, she talks about how she wanted to make sure she crafted a moment so that people could relive it with the toys. She was like, I need to write it so you could follow the exact same footsteps, you could do the exact same thing. So she was like, I really went to town and like had to find episodes where in the past they've gone to this place or they've done this, and I was like, shit, there is a real like love to it. I know it's getting panned from fans for being like, you don't like the source material, but I think it's hard not to watch the interview with writers who, bear in mind, writers aren't like actors when they're on a press junket. Writers are pretty blunt, I guess.
Yeah.
So when you watch it with these people, they're just all super excited about it and love it, and it feels like a passion project. So
I'll watch
see if
it.
that
I'll watch after
changes
this. I think I'll have a look, see if
Yeah.
it makes me feel any different.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to go over about it?
I think that was everything. I think, yeah, I'd honestly just implore people to go watch it, because I think as an animation,
I think
it's really
everyone
cool.
should watch it.
Yeah,
Everyone should watch it. Even the people that are saying they're not going to watch it because they've heard. I think that's the one thing that drives me more crazy about like people that don't like it, is that some of them haven't even seen the whole thing. They're just, I'm not going to like it because I know it's like He-Man's not in it. It's like, we said that with like The Last of Us and stuff.
yeah.
Just
for
because,
sure.
you know, Joel dies, Jesus Christ, go and play that game, or, you know, anything like that. It's like, just because Captain America is Falcon now, Jesus Christ, go and read that comic, because it's a really good comic. All right, cool. That was good fun.
Awesome.
All right, that's it for our Loki and Masters of the Universe Revelation episode. If you're interested in finding out more about Consistently OK Podcast, you can follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at ConsistentlyPod, and on YouTube you can search for Consistently OK Podcast and find us there. We stream on all podcast services, and each episode coming out on Wednesdays. If you're an Apple Podcast subscriber, you can subscribe for extra content. Our next episode is another in-depth Batman episode, and this time it is the almighty Batman and Robin episode. And we have our very, very good friend, the lovely, wonderful Harry Hughes, is joining us to dissect that film. And
Cowabunga.
Cowabunga. Long live Mr. Freeze.
Yeah.
So if you've been following our in-depth series, then that is the next one in line. So it's the end of the Joel Schumacher Batman films. Thanks, sweet baby Jesus.
So sad.
And then we get onto the Christopher Nolan stuff. Hooray!
Although in the middle, we are talking Batman comics.
Oh, that's true. What a little break in the middle, so
Yeah.
which is great as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Nick, as always, and everyone for listening. All right. Bye, Nick.
See you in a bit, dude. Have a good one. Oh.